Hello, it's Richard Wilson coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. I spoke last night at a business conference here in downtown Tokyo, and I learned some lessons the hard way about how to do well while speaking globally. I think the speech did go pretty well. I got great feedback, a lot of business cards from people afterwards who liked what I had to say, but afterwards they came up with at least 5 or 6 different things I could have done better. And the next time I speak in a global or international location, I'm definitely going to do some things differently. So I wanted to share with you what I just learned before I forgot what I learned, and just to share the benefits of what I learned with you in case you're trying to speak more globally as well. So the first tip is that you should definitely go through your whole PowerPoint presentation, look at every page individually and carefully, and think about how culturally specific that page is. For example, in my presentation, I was talking about scarcity, and I referenced a expensive Mercedes that Michael Jordan sold last year. Of course, people know Mercedes here in Japan, and probably Michael Jordan, but maybe it would have been better to choose a picture of something that is of a Japanese business professional in America, or maybe something that wasn't just an American sports icon. Even a better example is when I was talking about marketing and persuasive writing. I gave an example of how a $1 bill and a $100 bill are the same, printed on the same piece of paper, but the message was different. I should have probably changed that to yen, and I did in the middle of my speech. I used a dollar example and a yen example. It would have been better if I had a picture of a yen dollar bill, like a 10,000 yen dollar bill, instead of having the American dollar bill on the PowerPoint. It made me seem a little bit less in touch with people here in Japan. Another tip is to speak slowly. Oftentimes when you're doing a global speech, there's translators or interpreters. They're called simultaneous interpreters, and what they're doing is every sentence you're speaking, they're listening and interpreting and then speaking into their microphone so that people who only speak, in this case Japanese, can hear the Japanese translation of what I just said. So it's very difficult, and they have to keep up with you. So the faster you speak, the harder it is going to be to keep up with you and really give that full translated or interpreted meaning to those people who are listening to in another language. So the faster you speak, the less of your powerful messages will actually reach your audience. So you should speak very slowly and carefully, at least as slow as I'm speaking right now. I typically speak a little bit too quick, so if you naturally do that as well, then pay attention to that. Another tip is that if you're traveling all the way across the world to give a 1-hour speech, you don't want to get messed up by not having your PowerPoint file available. So always have it on a USB or an SD card, or at least over email. It's best if you have it in USB as well as over email. Chances are the computer that they're on at the conference is going to have a USB slot and or internet. So you're pretty safe if you have it in both locations. Another tip is to take out all cliches and don't abbreviate any industry lingo. In my presentation I talked about USP, and that was unique selling proposition, but USP was a word that the interpreters who are very well trained in English had no idea what it was. So anything that's very specific to business or marketing or your industry, be very careful about using it. Over-explain it, make it very easy to understand what you mean by that word, or you might lose your audience. The interpreter might fumble and fall behind on what you're saying, and then people can really lose the power of what you're trying to say in your message. Another tip I took notes on here was to meet with the interpreters before you speak. I've spoken in places like Moscow and Brussels and other places in Asia before, and I never met with the interpreters before. I just went up there, started presenting, and they started interpreting the best they could. I thought it was really smart that the conference organizer at this event had me meet with the interpreters before I started. And what that allowed us to do is go over my PowerPoint presentation. They had 4 words circled. They weren't sure what they meant. I clarified it before I began. They told me it'd be helpful about speaking slow and being careful about using words that they wouldn't be familiar with. And I got a chance to explain the words that potentially could be confusing and lose the whole audience. It might seem like a really small thing, but it's super important that if 80% of the people listening to you are listening to, in Dutch or in Irish or in Japanese or in Chinese, that they hear what you're saying and get a lot of value from it. Because otherwise the feedback forms on what you said are going to be bland, or that you were boring, or that your stuff was not practical. And it might ruin all your hard work that you did to get there in front of that audience, and you might not be invited to speak again, or nobody might buy your products or services after hearing you speak. So those are the big lessons I learned while speaking here in Tokyo. Also, I just want to remind you that every time you speak, it's important to send a thank you note and possibly a thank you gift, a bottle of wine, a gift certificate to a restaurant where you met the speaker organizer, something such as that. Some cultures that's more important than others, so it's just always safe and good practice just to do that. If you work at the most professional type of expectation, regardless of what culture you're in, then chances are people are going to appreciate that in every culture, that you're overly professional and thankful for the opportunity you had to speak at their event. So I hope these tips help. These are things that I just learned about speaking globally just in the last 24 hours. So I hope you benefit from these either now or in the future as you speak more globally. Thanks for joining me. It's Richard Wilson, and I'll see you again soon.